Hello,
Oh
Trey.
my God, everything's working.
Really?
Uh-oh, wait. And again?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Cool.
What's on your wall there? Oh, it's a
Ah,
mobile. I thought it was a drone in the corner.
it's a mobile, yeah. From Africa.
Nice.
Yeah.
My room is so messy compared to your room.
Well, you wouldn't want to see what's around me. Oh. No,
Actually,
it's
let's try this. I don't know why this has never occurred to me.
oh yeah.
Not professional, right?
Well, you would have to turn off the lights behind the
Yeah,
thing.
that looks terrible. Fuck that.
Oh,
Screens are great though. I should have more of them. How's everybody today?
um, I'm okay. Cheers. Yeah, no, everything's good. Like they put a ceiling on rent prices here last year, and it was like a local.
Because of the pandemic?
No, just because the prices were like getting very high, right? And
In the
then
whole
they made
city or just in your neighborhood or
the whole city, and
wow.
and then it went to the highest court in Germany, and just like the day before yesterday, they said, okay, you can't do that, and so now the prices are back, and we have to pay like the last 8 months of the difference. We have to pay it back within 2 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
That
so
sucks.
but we knew that, so we saved
You've
that
been
money.
saving it.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's bogus.
Yeah, and I think there needs to just be like a countrywide solution to this problem, you know.
That it can only go up a certain percentage.
Yeah, I mean there is something like that, but still somehow the people that manage those buildings find a way to raise the prices anyway. And it's I mean it's interesting because Berlin was a place where rent was very cheap for a very long time, and so only when I moved here things started to get out of control.
Right.
So like my initial contract was still okay, but then I even that initial contract I turns out was 200 euros, so which is like 30% over what was allowed
Uh,
officially.
right.
So
Right. Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Cool. So I'm going to ask you questions today.
wonderful.
Actually, I don't have questions. I just want to go. I just want to find out about your background that I don't know about.
Okay.
Like when did Marcus start?
Um,
Or I'm joking, but like music, when did it start for you?
like I remember listening to the White Album by the Beatles as a child. I don't remember because I must have been able to put on the record myself.
Right.
So I don't know how old I must have been, but I remember singing into like some
I mean,
some
that's a
toy
hell of a
some toy microphone or something, and
that's a hell of a record for a kid.
yeah, yeah, it was pretty inspiring back then. I
In fact,
guess.
that might be, I mean, I don't know, but to me, that might be the record that goes everywhere.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, like it might have been the first record that just went everywhere from like Mother Nature's Son to Helter Skelter to how often did you listen to Revolution Number 9 as a kid?
I can't. The track that I remember listening to was "Hey Jude."
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then there's that. That's like yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
so
but
what do you think you were like 4 or something or
yeah, something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And Well, the thing is that, like, for me, the the timing of things is not clear anymore. I don't really
Mm.
exactly what happened first, but there is a there's this system in place here, which is based on Karl Orff's teachings, which is kind of like, and I don't know what you would call that, it's musikalische Früherziehung, so early education in music,
Like
right? It's called.
kinder music kind of a thing.
It's like, yeah, but it's not actually not kinder music, you're not child,
You're
not
not even
children's music, but it's like this idea that you have the Offsche Instrumentarium, which is like mallet, like small mallet instrument, but you don't get the full set of pitches. You just get one pitch to start with, right?
awesome.
So you just get an A or whatever it was, right? And then, like, I don't know at which intervals that you get a second pitch.
Right.
So and I can, I can.
Are you in a group, or are you in a?
It was in a group, so it was like once per week in the afternoon, and I remember it was at the very top of a building where it was like 6 floors up, and like, as a little kid, like walking up there was kind of quite something. And so yeah, the only thing that I remember was really like those individual elements, and then you also, the glockenspiels, you could take the bars off, right, and you could have just a couple bars, and that's what I had at home. And they had like these toy, like toy pianos, but they were actually actual glockenspiel inside, so that was chromatic already. I remember
Wow.
they had some of those there. But so but this whole idea of just having like one pitch and kind of like diving into that one pitch, that's something that's still very much with me.
And what was there um, was there movement or language with it, or
Yeah,
was it?
everything, I guess. I really don't remember much at all, but it was, and I never researched, because it's actually a thing, right? Like there are
Yeah,
maybe books
yeah,
about it, right?
right, right.
So but it was, I remember the lady, Frau Morisse, and she was, yeah, it's so funny because I don't remember much at all. And even like when I remember the room, I can only go as far as the bubble around me, nothing kind
Right,
of.
right, right. You still have an impression of it. It's not
Yeah,
just the story of it. Yeah,
yeah,
that's cool.
still have an impression. And I think it must have been like 1 or 2 years before I then went to the to play recorder. That was like a
Right.
recorder class. That was kind of like the second step.
And
First step,
this wasn't in school. This was like extra.
it's an extra thing. Yeah, then
What do
parents have to.
you know why your parents did that?
For some reason they saw value in that.
Or
So
was it kind of was it do you think it was a like they made a special choice, or was it just kind of in the culture that?
no, it was certainly a special choice, because like, but like my father's family was poor, and my mother's family was doing okay. They had like teachers and also like a lawyer even in the family, but my father's side, they were poor, right? So there's really not much sense of education or cultural education in my family at all. And like my
Right.
parents didn't play any musical instruments, and my mother loves music. So I guess that she must have been a driving force there. But I don't
Right.
know. But both my parents, they always supported me, like, which is kind of amazing. And they didn't really know what they were doing. So I find that extra amazing, right? And for a while it was kind of like an interesting topic, because then my father was saying like, if I had known that you would, right, like do
Hmm.
music all your life, I wouldn't have, like, it's just as a joke, but I wouldn't have sent you there, like, but it's
Oh, you would? Oh, I see.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm not going to send you to rodeo camp because cowboys turn out bad.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, but it was really, I remember going to the recorder class. I still remember where that room was, sort of. And I, like at that time, and even up until I was 18, 19, I had never even understood the concept of practicing anything or something. It was even in school, like I never I can't even remember doing my homework ever.
You would just be doing the thing.
I would just be doing it. Yes.
You weren't prepping for anything. You were just doing it.
Yeah, but the reason is like I wasn't particularly good at things, but if I had known that if you practice, you get better, I would have done it. And I think it was part of that education that particularly when I then, well, probably with the recorder, but then after I started playing mandolin, just an instrument tuned in fifths, interestingly enough. So
how old were you?
Maybe 9, I think 8, 9, something like that.
So was the mandolin around, or why did you?
Because it was something they offered at the school.
Oh, I see.
Right, and so it was kind of like my parents must have asked me, and it was something that I sort of like picked, and yeah. So it was like the first thing with the glockenspiel and stuff was at 4 or 5 years, then 6, 7 maybe was the recorder. And then 8, 9, 10, 11, something like that was the mandolin.
So you didn't play the guitar?
No, I had my first guitar lesson on my birthday in 87. So 3rd of September, 87. I was 15.
So you played in fifths for how long? On the mandolin?
On the mandolin? Well, now it's 40 years now.
But I mean, back
then. Back then,
before you switched to guitar,
like 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's funny. But even like these things, I didn't really understand back then. Like, okay, it's tuned in fifth, it's tuned in fourth. Like there was
here's the notes.
Yeah. There was no understanding about like what would be better or blah blah blah. And I was reading. There was a guitar orchestra, and like traditionally the guitar orchestra has mandolins in it, which is interesting because it's called guitar orchestra, but it has mandolins in it,
right?
Or mandolas, and so I played mandolin in the guitar orchestra for quite a few years, and only later, when I was maybe 16, 17, and I had guitar lessons for a year or so, then I started playing guitar in the guitar orchestra.
Right.
But so for me, tuning and like reading, it wasn't natural. I mean, I wasn't great at it, but I could decipher things,
Right.
But also there, I can't remember ever sitting down at home with an instrument, playing through any of that stuff. I always did it just there in the moment when I needed to.
And that's so interesting because, in a certain way, like if you show a kid how to practice, you could actually wreck it.
Maybe.
I mean, not a guy like you. That's the thing. Like you probably would see that you might see the key, and I guess I kind of did too. But that you want to play a game, but you've got to put 10 times more hours of playing it into getting ready to play the game. You might just,
Yeah, but you see, like when I was 10. And like my uncle and my mother took me to a rock concert, which was like very lucky. It was Mike Oldfield, so it wasn't just a pure rock concert. It was amazing. Like
where was that?
It was in Essen, Germany. So about 2-hour drive. So it was an effort to get there. And like I said, I was not even 10. I was.
Why did she take you?
My uncle, he was kind of like the guy who brought music into the house. He had a record collection, and it was the late 70s, early 80s, and he had good records. Like just he liked music, and that's where I first became aware of the fact that there was something like like when I was putting the Beatles record on, I didn't really yet understand that there's a whole world of music out there. But then a few, like 6 years later, maybe, my uncle had the collection, and then he played me a Mike Oldfield record, 5 Miles Out, which had just come out in 82, and I liked that a lot. And then I had a tape with Tubular Bells on it, and my mother was a big fan at that point also. Like we both kind of like fell in love with that music at the same time, my mother and I, somehow. And when there was the concert, they took me, which is incredible. Like,
wow.
Yeah. And
it's almost, I can picture it almost being too much for a 10-year-old. Not nowadays, but back then,
it was certainly really, it left such a big impression. right? And but it was interesting because like there's one or a couple pieces on which Oldfield actually plays the mandolin
Hmm.
or played the mandolin during that show. And somehow I kind of like I had this, that was like the first time where I sort of like beaming myself into that person, like
Hmm.
trying to kind of like, what does it feel like, or what does it feel like to look into the audience, like, you know, like something like that, or just the excitement of performance. And somehow was already kind of becoming apparent. And then back then I already understood there was this one guy who does all of this, right? So there's one guy who composes, who plays, who, you know, is the band leader and produces the records and everything. And so when we returned home from the concert, I knew I wanted to have a keyboard for some reason, right? I wanted to have keys, and I had before that, I, you know, maybe there was like a friend of my grandmother, and she had like a piano at home, and maybe I played a few notes there, but I didn't have a concept at all. And then
You get it. Yeah.
yeah, and then my parents got me like a small Yamaha keyboard, like 2.5 octaves, like small keys or something like that. And I remember that I was, and that's, you know, going back to the idea of practice or practicing. My practicing was the initial practice was not about technique or anything. It was about like, what does it sound like? What if I go from this combination of keys to that combination of keys? And then pretty early on, I learned things like, okay, like going like from C minor to an A minor, like these, you know, further apart, like the medians, you know, that kind of thing. And it was interesting because I really was drawn to that. And it was also the time then of the mid 80s where you had bands like Level 42 or even Depeche Mode, which kind of like they had these kinds of interesting chord sequences. Like at that time in the 80s, there were these modulations and stuff, right? And so I really picked up on that and really loved that. And that's why I still say that my initial inspiration for becoming a musician is actually that the sound world itself, like even removed from the timbre or the sound of the sound, but the combination of pitches, right? So it didn't matter if it was.
Would you say that's the like the architecture of the?
Yeah, the architecture. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's more than architecture because you can kind of like replace the sound. Well, maybe it's architecture, but you know the structure with the relationships would stay the same, right? So you could have a string sound or an oboe sound or whatever you would, you know, and that's why I think I have become very good at sort of like working with that architecture, because I can still, up to this day, imagine music without sound. And it sounds stupid to say that, but it is in my case, it's possible somehow. Like I have this.
And do you don't hear like sine tones or something, do you? Or
No.
do you, is even here, it's not even necessarily hearing, is it
It's not hearing, no.
Yeah.
It's more like, you could say it's more like the voice leading. It's more like, okay, like where does this move? Like, does this move like a half step or a whole step? Or, you know, that's kind of like how how the sound that is not a sound is represented. It's like movement of voices, right? Yeah. And yeah, so and that was the first time, like after that first concert.
So are you still talking like 11 years old?
This was 10 years old. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, you know, there was the upgrade to like a bigger keyboard with like normal size keys and like 5.5.
Because it is kind of it is access to the orchestra. Not I don't mean this the actual orchestra, but it's like with all those pitches all laid out like that, suddenly the piano is a kind of orchestra, right? Like you.
Yeah, certainly it is. And you know, like the kind of keyboard instrument, it was like what like this the German word is Alleinunterhalter, so like an entertainer, right? Like you have like this keyboard, you press one key on the left side, you get your A major, right? And then if you add a black key to the left of the note that you get a minor, right?
Oh,
You had a
okay.
minor and stuff like that. And so it was like the system where you could only use 2 fingers and you could get like a band in a box, right?
Right.
And so my parents signed me up for like what it was called like a keyboard course, which was actually for that kind of instrument. So I had
Did you
these
go
books.
somewhere, or it was books?
No, I went to a teacher, but it was very basic. It was just like, okay, yeah, you hold the C here and you play the melody. So it was just a melody with chord symbols,
Right, right.
So and that's what I did for a while. Like,
But you know what's cool about that, now that I'm thinking about it, in a way, it's it's uh, um, it's a more immediate way to play around with harmony, because you don't have to you don't have to worry about all the fiddly fingers and whatnot. It's like, okay, what do these two sound? Okay, what do these two sound like? What do these two sound like?
yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing about this keyboard was that you could put it. That was like I can't remember what it was called, the 1 finger mode or something. And then they had the fingered mode where you could actually play the real triad. And and then already, like, I never played the real triad. I tried on, okay, what happens if I if
Right.
I have an F minor and I turn the F to a G, and what happens? Like, how does this thing interpret what I'm doing here, right? And yeah, so yeah, I agree. So it was probably also like kind of like almost forcing me to be very aware of harmony. And
Yeah, because when I think about it now, when you're trying to get a sense of the chords, the first thing you got to do is memorize what are the right notes to play.
Yeah.
And the shapes or whatever, just to be able to. I mean, of course, you could just go wild and play around, but that's not the same thing as having kind of a half restraint where the tonalities are defined and you can kind of combine them. And
the interesting thing is that I think that even though there was this one finger thing there, I was always aware of what it meant somehow, that it's a chord, it's more than one note, right? And then like triads come so easily on a keyboard instrument, right? It's every other key, you could say, right? So and that's why I think I was already, and I probably going back to the learning to play that xylophone, just one note, and then so I became very aware of the spacing and the individual sound of each note. And yeah, so at that point I was already kind of the kind of language of harmony was already accessible somehow. Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder how much, because you're just open and you don't have any, like, once I started learning, I kind of like, oh, I know that. So you're not, but because you're at an age where you're just so open, you're just absorbing the shit. Like, that's great.
It's just, I'm just trying to remember, but I think I must have been like, say, between 11 and 14, let's say, right? Or 13. And these books have just had sort of like the biggest hits in the world, right? So that kind of like you were saying, like,
let's have something.
It was like raindrops, right? Keep falling on my head. Like, it was like something like that, or like some Russian folk melodies, like some things that we kind of know, like a tico taco, like that kind of Latin stuff, and like all these tunes, and also classical pieces.
And when you say classical, you're talking about like Swan Lake kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, something like that, or really something like Für Elise or something.
Okay, right.
So like really popular pop music, right? But from all sorts of countries and cultures, and since it was always just the chord symbol and the melody, somehow it really maybe even helped to kind of like make the connection. Like, and I can't remember which piece it was now, but then it started in C major. The second chord was in E major 7, right? So, and back then I already understood, okay, that's not the right key. So what's going on? And right. So and then it goes to A minor, obviously, right? So it's like it's that kind of it was always interesting to play these pieces and be inspired by the chord sequences that are, and I mean, to be quite honest, up until I don't know, that that era of the 80s, like the pop music was still sophisticated, or there was room for sophisticated pop music, and quite a few world hits actually are quite sophisticated. Right?
Yeah. And I always wonder, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but it seems like, well, there's kind of I mean, there's obviously some people who they must have been keyboard players and like had discovered some of this. And then there was kind of that punk rock element. I feel like we're like, let's just try this. Okay, no, let's try. Okay, well, that's cool. That's weird. I like that. You know, and the ethos still was that harmony meant something, unlike today. To be, you know.
Yes.
That was part of the story. Like you had to be going somewhere.
Exactly, and that's why the pop music of the mid 80s was so interesting, because as you say, it was the punk kind of like people that came from that school, let's say, right, and then trying out, okay, just what happens if I just move, you know, things in parallel on the keyboard, which, like, you know, like in a classical context it's not allowed, right?
Right.
So but you would start doing that, and then these interesting chord changes. You know, like I remember, I mean, there are quite a few, even like on the earlier, on like Construction Time Again, or like Depeche Mode, like those, like already great. But then Music for the Masses, which I think was in '86, like Behind the Wheel, and like I don't know if you know these songs, but it's awesome. It's like all these chords, which, you know, like each chord is in a new key, right? And for some reason, because I had already had my hands on a keyboard instrument, it was always like interesting to see, okay, what do they do? Like, how do they, and basically I started transcribing at that age.
So it kind of opened, it opened up. I mean, you already were open to it, but you were able to open it up.
Yeah, exactly. And once I started sort of like approaching things as an transcription mode, right? So I was interested in, and you know, here's something really, really cool. Like because of that first show, I'm a big Mike Oldfield fan still, right? And for some reason, I did not really look closely at. It took me a long time until I allowed myself to analyze what he was doing.
Oh, yeah.
Interestingly enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
but,
you know, I don't know if you have you probably have this experience less than me, but sometimes the magic can slip away a little bit. And I don't mean that like don't analyze. I mean, I think you can go through that and come out the other side. But the thing that always surprised me when analyzed some music, I would find that there's not really as much there as I thought there was.
yeah.
Which is cool, you know, in its way.
Actually, that's a great lesson, actually, because then when you realize that the magic is not about a specific ingredient, or not even a specific combination. It's sort of like also the air in which these elements live, right? So it's it's
sometimes not, though. Sometimes it really is the architecture of the piece, you know, and that's a cool thing. That's a cool thing to figure out.
I mean, it is all for sure, because it's just like background and foreground in a way. Right, and in a way, like as you say, so even something where there's nothing much there, like for example, here, this is a good one, Satisfaction, Rolling Stones. Okay, famous riff. Dun, 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 dun. So it's B, F sharp, D, right? So, and then like when you listen to the bass part goes, I can't remember exactly. No, it's just E, F sharp, no, F sharp, G, A, da, da, da. So the D of the riff is on an A, actually. So it's a fourth. It's ridiculous, you know. Like, but all of these things, they were super exciting to me, just to figure this out and say, well, this is wrong. Like nobody would really write that unless it's two drunk guys in a room playing riffs, and you know, something like that happens.
Right. I mean, you could say they just stumbled their way in, but the thing is, they decided they heard it and they decided that they liked it.
Yes. Right? Or they didn't hear it, which is kind of like something that I think also happens in musical history, especially when bands play together. Like there's like these interesting. Here's an amazing example. Maybe I mentioned it to you. It's that's the way I like it. Casey and the Sunshine Band, right? It's that the first it's in C minor, and the bass player plays C B natural.
Oh yeah.
On the one.
Yeah.
That it's fucking amazing. It's such a huge hit, and it's disco, and like it's positive, right? And has this incredible flavor, and this is kind of like what excites me so much about music.
And you really couldn't think. I don't think you could think that up.
No.
You know, that doesn't make sense. It's funny, you're making me think, not as good of an example, but I do now remember from the White Album, when my drummer buddy and I, John, decided we wanted to play the song Birthday. We had not noticed, even though we listened to the record for years, that the guitar goes da 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 da, and then there's a break, but the bass keeps going. We thought, holy shit, do you hear that? That one, and also in the song LaGrange, ZZ Top. When we learned that, John was like, wait, listen to what the bass player's doing. He's just going. He's not playing the riff. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what I mean. Like the ear opening up to hearing individual parts. But you need to know, being European, and sort of like on TV we had shows. We had like something like the Leonard Bernstein stuff. I guess it would probably even was the Leonard Bernstein stuff that I saw as a kid, even, right? And so like I already had an idea what the instruments of the orchestra sound like. Maybe because it was part of that very first course in music that I took, right?
But so also it would have been, it would be in the air.
It would be in the air, but I'm sure that I can't remember, like elementary school, which is like in Germany, it's the first 4 years of school. I can't remember. I do not remember. I can't even imagine we had music classes. But then in the it's gymnasium, so it's sort of like a high school. It's the second part of your which is how many years? 7 years, I think. Yeah, 7 years.
Right.
I was in school for 13 years.
Right. So did they have orchestra and stuff there, or?
Yeah. It, for some reason, this is kind of like interesting as well. So like what I wanted to say is, so I was already able to distinguish between the sounds of strings and maybe what a horn sounded like. I already knew that somehow, right? And then when it extended to rock music or produced popular music, I was also already able to pick out like the harp, or like Andreas Wollenweider. It's like, I don't know if you know that guy, right? Yeah. So that was kind of like part of what my uncle played me. Like that was like in his record collection, right? And I remember John Miles music. Like I remember when my uncle came home with a 7-inch that he'd driven like 2 hours to buy that 7-inch, and we put it on, and was it's basically a rock band with a symphony orchestra.
Okay.
It's a cool song. It's called Music. You should check it out. And so it was in the air, but I had this experience with being educated somehow. And then like as you were saying, this example that suddenly you start realizing, oh, actually, okay, the riff stops, but now I'm actually hearing the bass. But the bass was there all the time, but somehow your consciousness didn't go there, right? For some reason. And I remember it was maybe 86. I bought my first CD, which was Mike Oldfield, Incantations. Incredible piece, and like it was my first CD. I didn't have a CD player, but our neighbor had a CD player. So and he copied the CD onto a tape for me, and I had a Walkman, and I was in bed, and listening to it and basically analyzing the music as I was listening. But not just kind of like, because I didn't really understand the pitch structures at that point. I was 12 or something, right? Or 13. But what I was doing, I was listening to the mix. So sort of like, okay, I already realized, okay, there's a guitar here, and
These are the sounds. These are the sounds.
But I was already aware of, okay, there's a delay, which is like the guitar's on the right channel, but the delay's on the left channel, stuff like that. And then because, with that album, not so much, but with later albums, like maybe like, yeah, same time. So mid 80s, there were already analog desks that had automation, right? Like with computers.
So you could do more sophisticated mix.
Yeah, so that's when I listened to also like it was mostly the Oldfield albums, right? So there's one called Islands, which has a 25-minute piece on one side, and it's an incredibly detailed mix. Like everything's moving all the time, like in a way that was only possible because of the technology that became available. And
but that would have been just the flying faders, right? He would have had to have done. Was it SSL happening already by then, or did you have to do? Did you have to do like the sends and the EQ on the fly and manually?
To be honest, I really don't know, because I was really too young. But it was a Harrison desk, I think I remember.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, because I can remember doing some records at that time, and you if you got flying faders, you were like happy. But if you want to pan something, that you got to have people all over the desk. So he might have, or
mixed
it in sections maybe as well, and
or you're clever and you're actually you have stereo signals on two faders.
Oh,
that way you can do that. Or maybe it was actually the panning could have been recorded.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so that you actually, as you record it, you're doing that. And certainly with
but it must have taken him forever.
Yeah, but there's an album called Crisis, Oldfield, like his 10th anniversary album, and there is like a lot of Fairlight and Oberheim sequence stuff,
okay.
and it was like the first time that I heard these. Well, now I know it's delays and reverb, right? But like this really spacious, and where it was ping pong delays, but they were kind of like done in such a way that it felt like things were circling, like doing this kind of movement. But anyway, like what I'm trying to say is that like even before I really understood what was happening, like harmonically, melodically, and before I was getting into analyzing music on that level, I was listening to the production, funnily enough. Right? So it's which is
that's orchestration. That's what you would have been doing 100 years ago, right?
Yes. Yeah. So and that was then like not my new fascination, but an additional fascination. Like what because I could. It was almost like you could follow these elements. Like I had never this image that like some people do, that like a certain element is like a character in a story or something. Like I never went there. For me, it's always like it's super concrete. Like the music is super concrete. There's nothing magical in it, and as in that there is an imagined world that I kind of like put on top of it, right? So there's so much in the factual sounds already that that fascinated me, right? But maybe also I'm not a very imaginative guy.
Your head might blow open.
Yeah, but that was like that was the time also of like Howard Jones and Nick Kershaw and like these cool and great songwriters
who I don't know if I told you, Katsi and I went to go see. Did I tell you we went to see Howard Jones like a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, because Nick Beggs was playing with them. He's like, yeah, we're doing this acoustic show. I was like, I wonder if Michael would like to go. And Michael's like, oh yeah, I'm a big fan. And my expectation was pretty low. It was freaking amazing. It was so musical, and it was mostly him just solo piano. No, not a synthesizer anywhere. And Nick, there might have been a third guy, but it was unbelievably musical, unbelievably fantastic. And he was a great keyboard player and a great singer. And he did a Beach Boys tune that was freaking amazing. And he did a little analysis before about the chord changes and stuff. It was great.
You see, that doesn't surprise me, because really it's that kind of vibe that his music.
Yeah, he totally had what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like let's go to this key. Let's see if can I get there? Can I get to this key? Yeah, I can make it work. I'll sing a melody and I'll go to the bridge and do that. It was, yeah.
And like a big classic is obviously Tears for Fears.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so all that music, and like I could probably list like another 20, 30 artists there. It was all very inspiring. Yeah. But
when you switched to guitar, when you started playing guitar, did you just like switch? Was that weird for you after the mandolin, or was it just another thing and no big deal?
I can't remember exactly, but my mandolin teacher, he must have stopped teaching already. So I don't think I was having lessons with him up until I went to have guitar lessons, but I can't remember now. But okay, the story went like this. I had a friend at school, an Indian guy, George, like real India, right? And he lived like 2 houses, like 1 minute walking, right? And his parents were also both in, just like my mother, in working in a hospital, right, as assistants or nurses or whatever. I can't remember now what they did, but so I was a friend of the family, and George was a genius, musical genius, and we were listening to music a lot. And he was a guitarist, so he had a classical guitar, and so I was already kind of playing around on it there. And somehow it must have inspired me so much to say, okay, I'd like to have guitar lessons. And then there was this young, like as I said, I was already in the guitar orchestra, so I was in touch with the people that are.
Oh, because you were doing mandolin.
Yeah. And I remember like the one, there are a couple pieces that I remember that I really enjoyed a lot. There was Asturias, the Albeniz kind of, which is a beautiful piece that we played with a guitar orchestra, but I was on mandolin. And then there was some Vivaldi, which was like a mandolin concerto or something, which like I was not playing the solo part, like a lady was a girl. and I loved that too, that kind of like that intricate style sort of, but that was it was somewhere between classical and Baroque in terms of how it functions, right? And I enjoyed that a lot. And then somehow I was like, at that point I was like totally kind of like into music, and it was the only thing that I was interested in, like school.
And you could read pretty well, right? Were you sight reading this stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
it was probably like single parts, right?
Yeah, it was all single parts.
Because of the orchestra. How big was it?
Maybe 14 people, 15 people,
okay,
something like that. So pretty big, good sound. And actually,
did you guys have a mando cello?
I'm trying to remember, but I don't think we did. I think we had just classical guitars and mandolins. Wow. And like the mandolin with the round body. And I still have mine at my parents' place. Then I had my first guitar lesson, and I always will remember because it was my birthday. So it was my birthday in '87, and the teacher Eddie, his real name Edgar, but Eddie, they called him Eddie, and he's young. I don't know. He must be maybe less than 10 years older than me. So like your age or even less, I can, and he was really he knew King Crimson, and like he knew all these. Well, at that point I didn't know King Crimson, but I later found out. So he was also into jazz, like Schofield, and so that's why, like, even like at 15, then I got in contact with what was then contemporary jazz. Not that I fell in love with it, but at least like the names were around, and kind of knew about that kind of music from that point on. And actually, somebody important that I've forgotten to mention. So this original keyboard teacher I had, who was really just a keyboard teacher, and he was not a classically, well, I don't know how, if he was trained or not, but he was just teaching this simple style, right? But then he kind of like, because he had a music store, and in the back of the music store they had the room where they were teaching, so it was both a school and a music store. And so that's also how I got in touch with like trying out a DX7 and CZ1, like Casio kind of stuff, synthesizers, early stuff that I experienced there. But like at some point he had students there that were teaching. And so one of my teachers was a student from, I think he was actually a recorder. He was studying recorder at University of Münster or Osnabrück or something there. And he was great. And he was also a pianist. And so when I had lessons with him, he had me play like the two-part inventions, and he gave me composition assignments. And
awesome.
And like actually like an album of mine from like 3-4 years ago, it's actually based on an assignment he gave me when I was 14.
Right? Oh, nice. So did you like redo the assignment now, or did you have the music that you made back then?
I had the music all the time. It was in my head, like these melodies, right?
So you just took that and made something.
Yeah, I just had, I had to wait for the right time for for that melody to fly, I'd say, right? And yeah, so he was important, Ulrich, and he actually lives in Berlin now. And I actually met him a couple of times, like 5-6 years ago, and we were going to also play together. But then I didn't follow up on that because I was too burned out. But anyway, he's here. It's amazing. He was like I don't know. Well, he's like over 2 meters tall, like 2 meters 20 or something, like this much taller than I am. Incredible guy. Wow. And very important. He was the guy who mentioned King Crimson to me. And he made me a tape, like a mixtape, which only had 2 songs on it. And it was Heart of the Sunrise, yes, on one side, and it was David Torn, Cloud About Mercury, like the Snapping the Hollow Reed, the first track of that album on the other side. And it totally blew my mind. And I think like the Yes thing at that point already sounded pretty old to me sonically, but then the composition was awesome. I liked it a lot. But on the other side, the David Torn with Bruford, with Simmons drums and Tony Levin on stick, and so like it was awesome. And so he was very important for me. And that was even before I had my first guitar lesson.
Right? Wow. Yeah. So you were pretty corrupted early on.
Yes, and then then the guitar lessons were mostly based on classical literature. Like I can't remember any specific piece, like the Leo Brouwer stuff, the Etudes, which probably right? That's great stuff, and some of the Fernando Sor things. So all the usual stuff, and nothing special really ever. I remember,
but not easy to play that shit. I mean,
not easy. Like conceptually, I was understanding all that. Like it was just that, and this is I'm totally honest about this. I just didn't have the concept of practicing, like I didn't understand. It was not like or you could say there was nobody who motivated me to actually practice. And now looking back, like, and it's maybe that it was the same in regular school, is that maybe I was just very gifted somehow, that like things came to me easily, and I didn't like, so people didn't really have to teach me. Like the teachers didn't have to teach me because I was very quick at picking things up, and somehow I never acquired the skill doing my homework, of having the experience that working would bring me to the next stage, let's say. Like,
Well,
so
I mean, don't you think maybe that's just because you have to hit some kind of a wall, or somebody has to tell you this is the way you do it? What's the other option?
yeah, it's probably it's true, but in hindsight, but like just thinking about myself in that position, and just about like the other, well, I really like, I think what it really was is that so for my intellectual skills, let's say, they were on par or
Mm.
with like the kids that had doctors, and as because we had this almost like a class system in school. So I was like, we had, it was, we have these letters assigned, had, A, B, C, and I was in G, right? And there was nothing in between, even like as if our group of people was kind of like even like removed in the alphabet from the others, really crazy. So in my school, there were like maybe 3 people who were actually German, and then we had Spanish, Italian, Turkish, Greek. Like it was it was wonderful for me, right? It was like awesome. Like, and George, the Indian guy, like
Mhm.
it was totally awesome. Like I grew up not being afraid of other people with other skin colors or other
Mhm.
languages, or like that was just totally normal to me.
Mhm.
But then, and this is something that I only realized actually 20 years later, when there was like a school reunion, when it actually occurred to me, maybe we did have the bad teachers back then, because
I
like
mean,
the
your group.
yes, and the other 3 groups, they, because like the first, like A was all the children of doctors, and the others were like lawyers and people with businesses, or like it really was like that. And so, and
Right.
we were the working class kids, and also the foreigners.
So they gave you like the carpenter teacher.
Yes, yes, yeah, exactly. No, and but then, because as a kid, you kind of like, you always try to make the best out of everything because you don't know better,
Yeah,
right?
you're just doing your thing.
So, and like some of the teachers, they were nice enough, I guess, right? And but then, like looking back, there are some teachers where I know that I haven't learned a single thing from them,
Mm. Mm.
right?
So they weren't like they I mean, I made a joke about carpenter, but they weren't like they didn't have you do interesting strange things because they were interesting and
No,
strange. They were just not good teachers.
no, they were just not good teachers, or very young teachers, right?
Very young,
Like I
right?
remember my English teacher, um, Frau Bröckelmann, strange name, and she had like her English was worse than mine, and I was 11, right? Seriously, like I was already watching like the A Team on British Forces television, right? Like
Right.
something like I've read that. It was really interesting, but like I said, like at that point, I wasn't aware of that. I couldn't have explained to you that the teachers are not delivering. I didn't have that concept because I was only also because of maybe my working class background. I wasn't even expecting to be taken seriously, or
Mm.
as a personal value, right? So
Mm.
somehow that is something that is still, I still feel that sometimes, right? That I don't um, think I'm worthy.
Mm.
It is that background, right? And also like my father's family, they were fugitives, right? So they were in camps and stuff when my
Mm.
father was young.
Mm.
Like so he has can remember now 6 or 7 siblings. So,
Mhm.
or it's a really big family, and like for him it was a big deal, like to even have 2 potatoes rather than 1 to eat and stuff like that,
Right.
so that's why, like I was probably, when it comes to my education, I was pretty humble and
Mm.
didn't ask for anything.
Right.
But then, like when I was like say 15 or something, and when I got close to the last 3 years of school, which is sort of like a it's like a well, you could stop after 10 years, right?
Mhm.
And then you would have like your degree A, right? But you could also have the degree to go to university, and that maybe you would have to do the extra 3 years. And so I did that. And at that point, at the latest, I realized, okay, there were people who were into theater.
Mm.
I had never heard of theater. I had no idea what it was. And then there were people who were in a group of like a group of people that were doing a play in French
Mm.
when they were like 16, right? So, and it was, to me, it was like I didn't have much contact, but because these last 3 years meant that like everybody was basically together.
It's
So
together.
the A B C D E F G like was no more, right? And then so it was late. So like, yeah, I was 16, 17, 18 when I actually saw other cultures, basically other educational cultures. I realized, okay, so these, like this guy's into poetry, amazing, right? And then there were guys who were actually into mathematics. Like I had no idea that you could actually be into that kind of thing. And so my
So did you feel like you'd gotten left out at that point?
I still then I didn't understand that really. But I guess I was just fascinated in the way that I realized, okay, so I'm into music, right? I love music, and so I'm not the only one, right? Because in my group, in my class, there were only there was nobody. Well, maybe one friend who also liked music, but I remember that I was listening to music on my headphones, and then some like this Italian guy, Luigi, a very funny guy, he came and he said to me, are you listening to your symphonies again? He said stuff like, yeah. So anyway, but like the other important aspect is, and there's a lot I could tell you, but my father had a really a very, very bad accident, so he almost died when I was 9. And it was around that time when I went to that very first music concert, so I think there is a relationship somewhere there, right? And so he almost died, and he was seriously ill for, let me think, just over 20 years.
Wow.
As a result of that accident. Right. And it was really unfortunate. Like he stepped out of the car to pee, and a drunk guy mistook the headlights that my father had left on as where the road is or something, and drove into him. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was like the right side of my father's body was smashed, broken, and like they had to remove like
some organs.
Yeah, some part of the what is it called? Come on, the intestines.
Intestines, yeah.
They had to remove a few meters of intestines and stuff like that, and so that was bad enough, right? But then in the process of being there, he also has got a blood transfusion, which was bad. It was hepatitis C.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So, and that was what he then struggled with for 20 years, and he was actually one of the first people who was virus free. Because like he was into these studies, he was part of these studies where they were testing drugs, right? And it was some sort of chemo. But the thing is that because like he was part of a study, he didn't know even if he was getting the
placebo.
The placebo, or yeah. So it was quite a crazy time.
And it turned out he wasn't getting the placebo. He was getting.
He was getting the real thing, and I mean, like it was obvious because you could see that he had real trouble. He was like sweating, and he had like a fever all the time, and stuff like that. So he had like real reactions to it's like chemo, really. It was like a combination of burning drugs, and it was and it was a new kind of drug that they had just discovered. I can't remember its name now, but and so like it was in the early. In the early 2000s, like once per year, he had to go to a hospital where they took they took a piece of his liver out, right, and then analyzed it. Is there any is the virus still active, or is it still there? And so like in like early 2000s, it was like the first time they said, no, it's gone. So it worked. Yeah. And
Wow.
it was crazy because then for a few years, my father was already gray then. So, but when he got uh, the note that said you're virus free, his hair got color again for a few
You're
years.
kidding.
I'm not
Wow.
kidding.
Wow.
It was incredible. And so it was maybe it was just like psychological.
Relief.
That could be right, or that in fact the virus was gone, his body regenerated for a few years.
Right.
And because he's a redhead, my father's a redhead.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so really, but like the good kind, like like really dark thick hair, and like
Right.
very healthy kind of like person, I mean, other than the accident and stuff.
Right.
So
Wow.
so that was fascinating. So all of that is connected kind of like with because that's like at 9 or at 10, that's the start of the second phase of schooling, where you go to another school, and right, okay,
Yeah.
and so from that point on,
you're kind of going out into the world a bit more.
yes. And the thing was that since my father was in hospitals for a few years, literally, right, like my mother had to go work. So my mother started working then, and I was spending time with my grandmother. My grandmother became my parents, right? And I had a young brother who was just 1 or 2 years old at that time. So every bit of energy that my parents had kind of like went to my little brother, which totally understandable. Like, I didn't, it's, and so, but that meant that I was becoming, I was forced to become an adult almost at the age of 10, right? Because of the situation. So, and my grandmother was great, and she was like she had more of a sense of the arts, and she was a music fan. She loved Bruce Springsteen and John Farnham and Christa Berg. Like it was was awesome.
Weirdly, we used to listen to Christa Berg. Like my stoner friends and I used to listen to Christa Berg. I don't even understand how we did that, but we did.
But it's just great music. I mean, simple as that. But like so I was, so all of these things came together. That first big rock concert I saw with that impressive music, impressive musicianship on stage. Me being sort of like alone, not having my parents around. My grandmother being very supportive, but not really asking me to do anything. Like I didn't have to help her in the household or whatever. So I was totally free.
Space. Yeah.
I had space and time to do whatever I wanted. And that's like where my head developed as like an independent crazy artist who could do whatever he wanted, right? And that was also the time when I never connected with people at school, because like they just didn't understand that I already knew that I wanted to become a musician somehow, right? Or work with music. And so I remember situations where when they asked me, like, do you want to go out with us tonight to play pool? And I knew what that meant. I mean, yeah, they were going to play pool, but they would try to smoke and try to drink. I just wasn't interested, because I knew like I would like to spend this time on
listening to your symphonies.
Yeah, listening to my symphonies, or even like that was also the time when I got my first computer. Like I went to a programming course, which was the programming language BASIC, which I learned back then, and I had like this really old computer with like a screen like this size, like my phone, right? And then there was the Atari ST, which I think I probably got in the first or second year of its existence, so probably in '86 or something. And so I was interested in that kind of thing, like sort of diving into my own world, kind of like, and like this architecture thing about music that you mentioned. It's also very much like working with computers or computer language. And so, yeah.
And when I talk to, well, I was going to say mathematics. Yeah, but sometimes when I talk to people who are really into mathematics, it's almost the opposite. It's like it's the um, the numbers are on the top, and then there's this other mystery underneath.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Well, but then you went on to study more music, or or not, or what did that look like? What happened after that?
Okay, so the last 3 years of school were the ones where I had my first great teacher, and he was an actual, well, the story, well, anyway, so there weren't enough people in one school for this course to happen. So what they did is they took people from 4 or 5 schools.
Oh, awesome.
And all 3 years to have a group of 11 people together. Wow. Right? And that was this course. So it was super intense, just like I said, like maybe 11 people in the class. And there was the teacher was an absolute genius composer, music analyzer, music theory buff, and his teacher was Harald Gensma, who was a student of Hindemith.
Okay.
So that's why I'm like, it's just at some point I realized, well, it's my lineage actually. Like,
yeah.
And so it's and anyway, so he was great, and I remember that the first grade he gave me was horrendous, like a horrible grade, like the worst, right? But he was a great teacher because he actually motivated me. He
explained to you.
He showed me, Marcus, I'm sure you can do it, but not like this, right? So he was maybe the best teacher I've ever met in my life, right? And it was only 2.5 years really together. But in these 2.5 years, because it was like 2 semesters per year, right? And so it's 5 semesters total. So what he did, we did all 5 epochs of music. So starting with, I can't remember now where we started, because this cycle started in a different place, because it was all the people of 3 years into one class. So, but we had early music, we had Baroque, we had classical, we had Romanticism, and we had new music.
Wow.
So it was and so half a year on each of these subjects.
Wow.
And the way that he taught it was amazing, because we started out with reading philosophers and history books from that era. So like he was okay, because he was all about, okay, what is the worldview of these people? What did they understand? What did they like? What was driving them somehow, right? And so, and then we started listening to music, and like every other week we had to analyze a piece of music, and there were actual tests, like 3 or 4 hour tests, where it gave us a piece of music and like, okay, analyze this piece of music, and you had to write in writing, you had to analyze a piece of music, and it was absolutely fascinating. And like we went to the opera together. So that's where I saw Wozzeck, for example, with
was this in Cologne or
no? This is in Western Germany, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. But it's a relatively small city, like 70,000 people. So it was I was really lucky that even existed there. But it was.
Did you guys meet like every week, or
it was 2 afternoons. It was Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay.
So it was 5 hours. I think it was 5 hours per week. So,
so it was regular, at least.
It was regular, and I remember, and this is funny because I only remembered that yesterday. I'd completely forgotten about that. There was actually also a practical music part of this, which was at the end of the Thursday class in the afternoon. And there was like 45 minutes of band practice. And I remember that was like, there were 2 guys. Yeah, it's super crazy. Like we played So What, or like was like jazz standards, like that we did. Like I think
with the same guy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? But I don't think he was so much into that music, but he actually just, that was like the open hour per week where you could do what you wanted. And there was like a piano guy, there was a saxophone guy, drummer. I can't remember now. And I guess I can't even remember what I played. Probably the bass. I do not remember. It's really funny, but it was really like amazing. And so now comes the very important story. So the teacher, Karl Heinz, right? He was retiring, So I think I was in the last year that he was actually there. So there was like a small party where he invited former students, and and I was sitting next to him, and he was talking to me, and it's always like the first time that he talked to me privately. Like he
Mm,
was just like this straight, like this classic kind of like teacher guy, right?
mm,
No personal thing whatsoever, right? But then sitting there, and he said something to me, Marcus, do not go and study music. Be the composer, he said. Be the composer that you are,
mm.
because. And then he was almost not crying, but you could see like he was tearing up a little bit, because
Emotional.
I didn't do that. So I did not
So,
do that. And
and so what was your takeaway on that? What do you think he was?
well, I did not apply to conservatory. I did
Yeah,
not.
you were going to. You were
I
going
was,
to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was amazing, because like he was really, he said that, like, because he was such an amazing person, amazing teacher, like really the best of the best, I would say, like, but he said, even though he was so great at what he was doing, he said he regrets that he did not write the music that he was supposed to write. So,
So,
and it was kind of shocking. And it was at the same time that I went to my first level 1 course.
mm,
Right.
mm,
So there were two guys, Robert and Karl Heinz, who said, Marcus, don't go study music.
mm,
Uh, you know,
mm.
do something else. And if you are, the professional musician, you're going to do it anyway. And that's
Right.
that's how that's how it turned out.
So you think he was kind of warning you against, I mean, essentially going into a teaching profession.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's what you come out as, really, right?
Most of the time, that's where people end up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Interesting.
kind of a sad thing, right? If you think about that, like even most of the teachers that I had were actually sort of probably frustrated in a way.
Right, right. Well, the sad part is, I mean, there's a lot of sad parts, but one of them is, how does it get transmitted if there aren't teachers?
That's the point, exactly.
But then how
Yeah.
does that, um, why does that potentially destroy something? And
You don't.
it doesn't always, there are teachers there's people who can share their information without being just teachers, but it's tough.
When it was still up in the air that I was apply for conservatory, there were like ear training classes that I didn't go to for some reason.
And
I did not go to those classes, but
while you were in high school, or
yeah, but though, the funny thing is those were in music school. So that was the other side. That was where I had the guitar lessons, right? So that
right.
that was where the ear training happened. But I
Mhm.
didn't go there. But I knew I would have needed that in order to apply for a conservatory. So I already kind of like maybe wasn't 100% into it. So,
I
but
see.
then there was the other thing that I would have had to have a second instrument, right? So in second, even though I already play guitar
Or a
and
real
keyboard,
instrument, not
yeah,
just the guitar.
yeah, exactly. So I actually signed up for saxophone, and I went to see the saxophone player for a few lessons. And he was the guy, even though kind of like this is amazing, like the saxophone quartet that he led at the music school was called Blue Job, right? Not a joke, right? So um, but anyway, like I remember I played him Neurotica, or like one of like, because that was the time when I was into that music, that track. And like the only comment he made was like, oh, the drummer doesn't groove. I think I mentioned that
See,
already.
that's what I was saying about jazz musicians in Crimson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was funny because I mean, it was funny, but I have at that point I was already like saying, okay, this guy won't be able to teach me anything. I
Right.
knew it, because like I don't need somebody to talk about music like that.
Mm.
That's obvious, or it doesn't matter. That's not about the
Yeah.
music. It's
Yeah.
about you, and I need to learn about music and not about you. And that's why meeting Robert at that time was really so important. And you know, the funny thing is, like, if I look back at my relationship with Robert, I think it was only, I mean, you have to say only a couple days with him, and he had already transferred everything to me. Like, I knew it. I didn't have to go write him emails or meet him often, or like, it was just like, okay, I get it. Like, here's my curriculum. You have basically delivered it to me in a, you know, in a couple talks, basically, right? And then I went with that, you know. And just a year later, I contacted you about your stick.
Where was your first guitar course? It must have been in Europe.
It was in Switzerland. Yeah, it was in 91, Switzerland. Yeah, and it was then, I think then maybe
I wasn't there, was I?
No. You weren't
Okay,
there.
it was the other one. Okay, yeah.
It was Anand who then mentioned to me that I should. Well, he probably gave me your address, and I wrote to you, and you know, that's how that happened.
Right,
So like,
right.
so a lot happened in those, and you know, there's like one thing which is probably also important. There were in my school there was a band called Oriental Foot Love, and
Can't do that these days.
and I felt excluded somehow,
because you weren't
because I wasn't in the band, but I thought I you know,
you should have been.
Yeah, and then for some reason, like, I don't know, they had some lineup changes, and then I got into the band, but there was only the bass player position. Okay, so okay, then I play bass, right? And it was cool. Like, I wrote actually for that, I wrote one song for that band called "Swimming in Tea," which I'm now playing with Stickman. Isn't that amazing?
That's funny.
Yes. And yeah, so that was, and I mean, it was an interesting experience overall, like some crazy stuff also. I remember one funny moment where, like, the lead singer and guitarist, like, we were playing something, and he was like so happy, and he was jumping around, and he had a bottle of orange juice in his hand, like a real glass bottle, and he started tapping on the top of it, and then suddenly the the bottom of the bottle went out of it. Like, it's like the whole room was full of orange juice. Like, so it was that kind of, like, it was good energy, right? It was a good band. And but it was in the house of somebody, of the second guitarist, and it was always a little bit of a strange mood. The mother was like a really drinking a lot, or smoking, and it turns out, like, I heard, I don't know, that that lady actually died in bed because she set the bed on fire.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if it, but you know, so and you know, like, this is also interesting. We had a manager, Andreas. Wow. We had a manager. So we played maybe 3, 4, 5 gigs in our career, right? But after one show where we actually made some money with, like, something like 2,000 Deutschmark, which was a lot of money back then, he actually was, he couldn't be found for 3 weeks. Not a joke. And he actually was in Amsterdam smoking weed for 3 weeks. Not a joke. So that happened to me, like, with my very first band, you know.
How old were you?
Yeah, 18, right. 17, 18.
Welcome to the world.
Yes. Yeah, and we also had recorded our first like demo tape in a studio, and it was like a 4-track Fostex cassette kind of thing that we recorded on with it was recorded you know, like one instrument at a time. I can't even remember how we did that. Like, maybe it's possible that I played the bass first and then the drums, and like some crazy order, you know, like, you know, it wasn't the drummer playing first, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, like, what you're saying, a question, when you met Robert, was it more just him confirming stuff for you, or did you?
No, not at all. I think I think he was the person who then finally opened my eyes to the world of practice. Like I learned like the hard way, right?
The craftsmanship.
Yes, yes, yeah, it was incredible. Like it wasn't confirming anything because I didn't know, but or let's say it confirmed something that I knew maybe there, but I didn't know it was there. So
but you had to see it you saw it in action.
Yes, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
And it was I've told this story many times before, but most people in that course, they had such respect for Robert, and there was like really like you remember like that, like sort of like a horrible kind of like silence and atmosphere and like fear, I would even say, but I don't think it was fear. It was more like this like looking at your idol kind of distance that was kind of like present there. And for me that was absolutely stupid, like not that I would have said that, because I also felt it, I wasn't immune to that, right? But it was like the very first night there it was a castle, and I met Robert, like as he was going to the toilet, right? But I didn't know, and I asked him, "What are you doing here?" And he had his nightgown on, which maybe you've seen him in many times, and I've only seen him once in that there. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm going for a piss." And those were the very first words he ever said to me. And somehow, that kind of like set the relationship up for me, that it was something that wasn't so serious, and that was kind of like, okay, there's somebody who wants to do me something good rather than, and so that's why when I looked into his eyes, there was no bullshit of, like, you're the master, I'm the student, that just wasn't there.
You're just a guy who has to take a piss now.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. No, it was really good. And I remember the very first class with him, like with a pick, with a ovation, and kind of like he said to me, "That's a good beginning." That's what he said, and then I already asked him about the stick. It was in my very first personal meeting with him, and he said that well, obviously, because you guys were already playing together, he said that he likes it very much, and that if he were young, he would like to also play it, and
right.
And in the same lesson, I asked him about like him being left-handed and playing the instrument right-handed and all these things, like some really the most basic kind of pressing questions and topics I had. And that's why I said, maybe it was only a few minutes of interaction with him that kind of like put me onto the right path somehow. And then obviously being in the circle and learning about circulation and like playing thrack, right, and stuff like that.
Right.
Which was super inspiring.
How long before you started playing the stick?
It was 1.5 years.
Yeah. So were you kind of were you working on the guitar with that method?
Yeah.
Just that time. Yeah.
Yes, but again, I wasn't, because I had come from my own culture of not practicing. I had sort of like some idea of that, but then the guitar, the instrument, was kind of like too close to what I was talented in somehow. So that's why receiving the stick from you was amazing, because
it didn't
make sense at all. So that's when I really realized, okay, I really have to do it for real now, or I could forget about it, right?
Yeah,
and that was that moment, and that was really one of the most important moments in my life, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's well, I have the same experience. It's like, holy shit, this is amazing. Holy shit, what's involved in this? Yes. Oh, man. All right, let's do it.
Yes. Yeah. I still have like a calendar from that I printed out with my Atari ST, a calendar where I had like the hours that I practiced per day in that first year or something. And it was I mean, like when people say they practice 6 hours per day or 9 hours per day, yes, maybe, but I was like to the second, right? So it was like 3 hours, but 3 hours meant like 3 hours nonstop,
Yeah.
actual moving my fingers, So, and I still have that calendar somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, dude, we didn't get very far today.
Oh no, it's good though. It's good though, because I really didn't know any of this. And what's the and maybe, maybe this is another thing, but just give me a little bit. What's the Messiaen connection? Is it just musical, or
It's that teacher,
oh,
Karl
same
Heinz.
teacher? So
Yes. So
he
you
took you on.
like in the new music half year, like new music semester, like we studied quite a few scores. Like Wozzeck was like the main score we studied, and
Oh shit.
we had like all the Hindemith, we had the Ludus Tonalis. So like I remember we had one test which was like a 3 or 4 hour test where we were supposed to analyze like this piano piece from Ludus Tonalis. And the funny thing is it's one where that kind of like road goes backwards in the middle. Like so it's just a mirror image. And like so part of that test basically was like, were you able to see that was happening, right? And was it because then you would only had to analyze the first half of
But then you actually only had half the work to do.
Yeah, it was really amazing. Like it was that kind of teacher, it's really, really cool. Right.
Right.
And Messiaen was part of that curriculum then. And we always listened to music, like at least like once or twice per week we listened to a work. Right. So it was really, really intense. Right now I don't remember, can't even imagine how he did all that in just 5 hours per week.
That's what I'm imagining, but
yeah, but it was pretty amazing. Like and Messiaen. So, but the funny thing is Messiaen for me goes a little further back actually, because this piano or recorder student that was teaching me for like a few months. He actually made me a tape of Messiaen organ works. And I remember because that was still the time when my parents and family, like we went to Yugoslavia for summer vacation. And I remember sitting in the car with my parents and my brother, like being like on this in a boat on the in the Mediterranean Sea, and I was sitting there in the car with the pine trees, like with the light coming through the pine trees in the car, and I was listening on the car radio. I was listening to Messiaen. I still remember that.
And what were they doing? I mean, what did they make of that?
I don't know. Like I think like for them, I was always a little bit strange, right? But somehow I was capable of finding that space, right? And I was a very good fighter against peer pressure. And I think that's really like back then it was my superpower.
Yeah, right? I mean it is a superpower. As a kid, as a teenager, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, for me it was very possible. Right? And the interesting thing is like there's obviously like lots of different layers here, but also since I was basically a single, like not an orphan, but like on my own since I was like 9.5 years old. I like my first girlfriend I had when I was 14 or something, right? And then with 15 I had my 15 and a half, I had my first proper girlfriend, and I was with her for like 8 years. It was crazy, but there was like also this like I basically left home when I was 10 years old or something. It's really intense, but for me it opened up so many doors, and like I spent a lot of time at my girlfriend's place, right? And I remember only driving home with my bicycle to sleep. So like at 10 at night I would then ride home, like was like 25 minutes or something, and I went to bed, and then at 6 in the morning I would get up or 6:30, and at 7 I would then take my bike in and go to school, right? And I was gone. Like so that was kind of what I was like. Yeah. And like probably I can remember now, probably always like with the Walkman, listen to music and stuff like that. Yeah, yeah. So Trey, I gotta go, unfortunately, but
Okay. No worries. That's great.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Well, thank you for this. This is
Great stories. Really interesting. Cool. All right.
do we want to meet again at some point?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Is can we do next week again?
um,
I mean, email me or whatever.
I'll email you. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks. Talk soon. Bye bye.
Cheers.